A few days ago, as I was gathering my thoughts on how much to say tonight, my wife said, "Just make it short and sweet." "Oh yeah," I answered. "What does short mean?" I asked. 5 minutes, she responded. I said, "Don't you think that a 364-page book merits more than 5 minutes of comments from the author?" "Well," she said, "this is a book presentation and that's what we agreed to. You have to give your guests enough time to also enjoy their meal, socialize, and dance." Well, my wife is right. Although this is not a 5-minute presentation, but I try to make it as short as possible. So relax and enjoy yourselves, and when time comes, feel free to dance the night away. Good evening and welcome. I am deeply honored that you came to be with us tonight for the presentation of my second book. I see my family, I see my friends, I see my co-workers, and I see well-wishers. I thank you all from the bottom of my heart. This is also a commemoration of my 14-year writing history. That's why it's a book presentation party. Before I proceed, though, it is fitting to mention that today is my father's birthday. Having said that, you may be wondering if we planned the book presentation to coincide with his birthday. Not at all. Events just converged in a serendipitous way. But why do I highlight this? Because the interest I developed later on in writing was the result of my father's encouragement. He always emphasized excellence in written and spoken English and used Latin quips to make his point when advising us. Ex nihilo nihil fit, he will say, meaning you cannot get something from nothing. In other words, it was his way of telling us that what you get out of something is almost always commensurate with the effort you put into it. If you want to do well in English, he will advise, you have to read and write a lot. I therefore dedicate tonight to the man who shaped my love for the written and spoken English, the man who indirectly made this night a reality. My father may be gone, but he will not be forgotten. And in the spirit of the Latin quips he loves so much, I say to him tonight, Dominus sit cumio. The Lord is with him. Now about the book, it's a collection of some of my published and unpublished writings about Nigeria. They were written over a period of 14 years, and whenever people read my commentaries, they ask what motivated me, an engineer, to become a writer. I'm sure that some of you, my esteemed guests, are wondering the same. I'll answer that question tonight and also discuss some of the contents of my new book. I left Nigeria in 1987, precisely 28 years ago. At that time, the military still held sway. They had not relinquished the stranglehold they had on the nation since 1966. You see, after the Nigerian Civil War that lasted from 1967 to 1970, General Gowon continued as the head of state. He was toppled in 1975, but his replacement, General Murtala Mohammed, was later killed in a very violent and bloody military coup. General Obasanjo assumed leadership of the country until 1979, when he handed over to a democratically elected civilian government with Shehu Shagari as president. The democratic experiment from 1979 to 1983 did not work well. Nigeria was adrift and corruption was rampant. The civilian administration had just entered its second term in 1983 December, when the military struck again and overthrew them. General Buhari became the head of state, but was toppled in 1985 by General Ibrahim Babangida. By now you're wondering, was this a game of musical chairs? It seemed like it, only that they were toying with a country. This constant change in administration partially explains why Nigeria was stagnant in development for a while. Each military administration suspended the constitution and ruled by decree. This gave them the power to crush opposition, stifle freedom of speech, and muffle press freedom. They came with new sets of rules, new staff, and philosophy, and often abandoned capital projects on the grounds that the previous administration was profligate. As a result, roads, bridges, buildings, and other infrastructure suffered neglect. The economy also suffered because the military men had no background, training, or experience in finance and economics. Like most people, I believe that America's greatness is the result of democracy, press freedom, and freedom of expression. The press compels leaders to do the bidding of the masses, and the masses jealously guard their rights under the Constitution. I therefore long for democracy and press freedom for Nigeria. I wanted to add my voice to those of other Nigerians seeking a better nation through the power of their pens. If writers were free to continuously shine the spotlight on the many maladies that ail Nigeria, the leaders would be more inclined to act. Nigeria's return to civilian rule in 1999 brought with it the dawn of a new era. The head of the new civilian administration, Olusegun Obasanjo, made efforts to institute democracy and freedom of expression. Also, the internet created a medium for me to add my voice to the world of commentary. Consequently, I wrote my very first 5-page commentary titled, "I Want Nigeria Back," under a column called Uzokwe's Searchlight. It was published on the internet news magazine NigeriaWorld.com in July of 2001. I had always wanted my writings to be published in a medium with global reach, but what happened after the publication of my commentary was unexpected. That evening, I came back from work and turned on my computer to catch up on global events as I normally did. I noticed that my email inbox was full. The emails were coming from people from all over the globe who read the commentary and were reacting. Most of the emails exhorted me to keep up the good work. Others suggested new topics to write about next. I was pleasantly surprised, so I continued to write more commentaries. I have not looked back since then. I've written about the reckless burning of tires and plastics in residential areas in Nigeria, with particular reference to the inferno half a mile from where I grew up. Burning of plastics and rubber add greenhouse gases to the atmosphere and make residents susceptible to chronic obstructive pulmonary diseases. I call for officials to stamp out the abhorrent practice. Looks like they listened then, because the trash was cleared for a while and the burning also stopped for a period of time. Even if one person was saved from COPD during the period the burning stopped, it is progress, one step at a time, one place at a time, and one life at a time. One of the greatest environmental threats facing southern Nigeria today is flooding. In the southeast, gully erosion has swept away whole buildings and threatened villages. Granted, the volume of rainfall and frequency seem to have increased since I was a child, but this problem is exacerbated by landscape imperviousness. Also, massive deforestation of the landscape has had a huge effect. Having nowhere to infiltrate, stormwater barrels down the landscape with fury, uprooting and sweeping away anything on its path, including buildings, and so on. In my writings, I've suggested some steps to help mitigate this threat. In an article titled "Build a Second Niger Bridge Now, Lives Around the Line," I joined in the call for the construction of a second bridge to straddle Africa's third longest river, River Niger, in Onitsha. The existing bridge has become structurally deficient and functionally obsolete. The new bridge is under construction thanks to the efforts of many Nigerians that placed calls and wrote about the issue. I hear, though, that construction has been halted temporarily by the new administration, and I'm very much concerned. On a visit to Lagos, Nigeria some years ago, I was appalled by the condition of the police college. I took a series of pictures and wrote an article about it. In the article, I argued that you cannot ask the police to effectively fight crime or bring order when you house trainees in barracks unfit for human habitation. Then, in 2013, a television documentary reopened the issue and made it a national story. Nigeria's president visited the site. The police college buildings have now been rebuilt. I've written about issues not specific just to Nigeria. After the September 11 attack on the World Trade Center, I wrote a commentary titled "America's Indomitable Spirit Shines Through in the Face of Tragedy." I know that there are mothers in this hall tonight. Bless your soul. To paraphrase Winston Churchill, my own mother shone for me like the evening star. As a result, many years ago I wrote a tribute to mothers with particular reference to my own mother. At the last count, thousands have either clicked on or read the tribute. In fact, many readers sent the tribute to their mothers or wives during Mother's Day celebration. That essay is also in the new book, and when you find time, please give it a read. And you will agree that the indispensability of mothers is as established and immutable as creation itself. I've written about rising incidents of building collapse in Nigeria. I've written about deplorable condition of Nigerian roads and what could be done about it. I've written about damaging effects of corruption on Nigeria's nascent democracy. And I've talked about and written about terrorism and insecurity in northern Nigeria. I've called attention to rising crime and its correlation with youth unemployment. I've addressed the need for improving the quality of education in Nigerian schools. In one of my articles, I argued that dying young was an epidemic in Nigeria that needed to be tamed. My argument was predicated on the fact that average life expectancy in Nigeria in 2012 was 52 years old. Average for United States is 78 years. These are just a few of my writings. The book is arranged by topics such as health, welfare, infrastructure, aviation, security, politics, published in 2003 and called Surviving in Biafra, the Story of the Nigerian Civil War. In it, I told the story of a war that ended the lives of 2 million from the perspective of a child that witnessed all 30 months of the war. People often wonder why 12 years after publication, the book has not faded away on Amazon.com. The only answer that I can think of is that the story pricks the conscience of anyone that reads it. A woman once told me she cried as she read the chapter where I narrated my mother's perilous journey to Onono, a village scorched and decimated by the war. My mother went there in search of my brother, but unbeknownst to her, my brother had been killed in the battlefield. Also, her father, her brother, her uncle, and several other relatives were killed in the same war. How much agony can one person take in a war? I wrote the book as a constant reminder of the human toll of the war, and hopefully will make Nigerians say unequivocally, never again. World-acclaimed writer Chimamanda Adichie called Surviving in Biafra a marvelous memoir of war, seen through the eyes of a young boy. Emory University in Atlanta has used Surviving in Biafra for a course in genocide and ethnic cleansing. A Nigerian newspaper recently published an editorial with the caption, Understanding the Civil War in 10 Books. Surviving in Biafra was one of the books in spite of the myriad of books out there, especially the ones written by generals and military men that fought the war. The book can be found in libraries of many colleges all over the globe, including Ivy League schools in the United States. And let it be known that I'm always humbled when people say they are conducting research work based on the book, or when they tell me that the book opened their eyes to the horrors of wars on children. But that was the book Surviving in Biafra. Today, it's about the new book, Contemporary Commentaries and Essays about Nigeria. In spite of all the issues I raise about Nigeria and will continue to raise, she's a great nation with a lot of potential. Think about it. Nigeria now has an entrenched democracy uninterrupted for 16 years in spite of the prognostication of many that said by now the country will be coming apart at the seams. Just recently, a successful election brought about a peaceful transition from one president to another and from one party to another. Africa's most populous nation has great industrialists, entrepreneurs, doctors, engineers, nurses, teachers, and college professors. She has men and women that have distinguished themselves in their various fields of endeavor, and some of them, I'm happy to say, are in this hall tonight. As I speak, vehicles and computers are now manufactured in Nigeria. Ownership of laptop and computer accessories is no longer the exclusive preserve of the middle class or the rich. This is because of affordability occasioned by local production. Ladies and gentlemen, what is missing in Nigeria is not ideas, not smart people, and not resources. There are plenty of great ideas, smart people, and oil resources. We just need elected and public officials with accountability as their watchword. Officials that have the will to do the right thing at all times. This is where a certain Latin maxim becomes relevant and says, Malum triumphus cum viri, boni deficiat agere. It means evil triumphs when good men or good women do nothing. Nigerian citizens and those with the power of the pen have a role to play in advancing democracy and holding elected officials accountable. They have a role in making Nigeria a true democracy, as propounded and amplified by President Lincoln on that cold November day and widely accepted as government of the people, by the people, and for the people. They should continually remind leaders that they are there to serve and even protect. So the answer to why I got into writing commentaries is simple: holding public officials accountable and helping to educate the masses with the hope of making Nigeria a better nation. To that effect, I've written more than 2,000 pages of commentaries about Nigeria since 2001. To put it in perspective, if I were to publish all of it, it would be 5 volumes of 400 pages each, and I'm not done yet. Before now, most of my writings were scattered all over the internet, so I often get emails from people asking if there is a single location where they can get all my commentaries. This new book answers their questions. It is my humble contribution towards the national discourse and development. This, my friends, is my story. This, my esteemed guests, is my odyssey. This, my fellow Americans and fellow Nigerians, is how I got into the world of commentaries and essays. God bless Nigeria. God bless the United States of America. Now I crave your indulgence to present my new book titled Nigeria, Contemporary Commentaries and Essays.